What's happening in the new construction industry in 2025 will change Vancouver developments forever. It's not a secret that the pre-sale industry currently is really struggling, and many developers thought that switching to rental towers will be their saving grace. Last week, we got a very interesting report from Stats Canada that talks about the new construction industry across Canada, but more specifically in cities like Vancouver. And the reports are not very positive. According to this report, we have seen 119% increase in unsold inventory in Vancouver alone. On top of that, CMHC estimates that the sales of new condo units have dropped by about 37% in Vancouver between 2022 and 2025, and the sales continue to slow down. Thousands of new condos are getting completed, and there are no buyers, so they're just sitting empty. There is a report from Rania that talks about how we will see almost 3,500 unsold vacant units by the end of 2025. There's a lot of new inventory and not a lot of sales, which usually leads to lower prices, and that's exactly what we see. CMHC estimates that the prices have dropped by about 2.7% for new construction units since 2022. However, I think this estimate is quite conservative because we have seen other reports of drops up to 20% below the original purchase price from just a few years ago. And all of this, of course, depends on the area and the type of property that you have purchased. Some areas have weathered the storm better than others. In some areas, people have a hard time qualifying for a mortgage because appraisals for their brand new units are coming in well below the purchase price. I have made several videos talking about the developer struggles, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of the same information in this video. If you're curious, you can watch those videos. I will leave them linked in the description below. I just want to focus on the new information that we have found from the Stats Canada. One of the most surprising things to me were the increases in the construction costs. So between 2021 and 2025, we have seen an increase of almost 25% in the construction costs. This number is bad by itself. However, if you look at the increase in construction costs since 2017 to 2024, the increase is 86.7%, which is mind-boggling. The construction costs in the last 8 years have almost doubled. And the news gets even worse because from what I hear in the industry, the construction costs in 2025 have gone up even more because of 3 factors. Number one, inflation. We have seen record high inflation over the last few years, and it's all catching up to us now in 2025. Number two, the tariff war between us and United States, which brings up the cost of materials quite a bit. And number three, the raise in labor costs due to recent immigration and temporary worker cuts. In fact, this last point is a bit of a two-edged sword because on one hand, the recent caps on the temporary workers and the general immigration numbers have softened the overall housing market, including the rental market. So that is good news. On the other hand, because we are getting less foreign workers and foreign temporary workers, the labor costs have gone up, which in turn raised the construction costs. So just to recap, we're currently seeing some of the historic low demand for the new construction units. Thousands of new units are sitting empty. On top of that, we have seen soaring construction costs in the last few years. That alone would be terrible news for developers, but unfortunately, that's not where the news stops. Because when you have empty units, you also have what's called carrying costs. Mainly, you have to pay off your creditors until these units are sold. And if the interest rates were lower, that wouldn't be such a huge problem. However, right now we're also experiencing some really high interest rates, which makes carrying costs for these developers incredibly high. A lot of these projects are planned years ahead. It takes about 26.5 months to build an average condo unit. And of course, the timeline is much longer for high-rise concrete type units, which means that developers were planning these projects years ago when the interest rates were a lot lower. Now, of course, the interest rates are much higher. They have come down in the last year or so, but they're still very high comparing to what they were just a few years ago. On top of that, the developers had to carry these higher interest costs at the time that the interest rates were higher. So it's not like because the interest rates are lower this year, last year didn't count. Last year, they still had much higher interest rates. So all of that accumulates and creates more pressure on developers. So all of this led to plan B for a lot of developers, switching to rental units. And this strategy makes a lot of sense. On top of that, federal and provincial governments were pushing a lot of programs to encourage developers to build purpose-built rental units. We have seen lower interest rates. We have seen sort of incentives in terms of the development costs, permitting costs, and speed up of the permitting application. In some cases, if you wanted to build a high-rise condo and sell it, you also had to include some portion of that condo to include purpose-built rental units. And all of that seemed like a pretty good plan. However, there are several problems with it that are currently backfiring. Number one, developers are starting to compete with each other for a small pool of potential tenants. Because so many developers have focused on purpose-built rental buildings, a lot of them are currently getting completed. 2025, 2026 is the estimated timeline for quite a few of these developments. There is one that just completed on Marine Drive. That's about 500 units. We're also going to see about 1,600 units coming to Kitsilano. And there's a lot of others that are sort of popping up here and there. And on top of that, developers are just renting out their current inventory that is not selling. So there is a lot of inventory all of a sudden coming to the market. Besides this new inventory, we're also starting to see more competition from a few other sources. Number one, Airbnb investors who have been focusing on short-term rentals are now switching to long-term rentals and now are competing with developers because there is more available inventory in the long-term rental market. Number two, you have sellers who couldn't sell their units because right now condo market is very sluggish. So they decided to take their units off the market from selling them and putting them onto the long-term rental market, which again increases the overall supply of rental units. And I should say this is pretty good news if you're a tenant. This is exactly what government was trying to achieve. A lot of this is not happening by accident. Some of it is happening by accident, but a lot of it is happening by design. At the same time as we're getting a soaring number of new potential units coming to the market for rent, we're also seeing fewer potential tenants because of caps on international students and general immigration numbers. In fact, as of late, we have seen several reports and articles talking about how the population of Canada has not gone up at all in Q1 of 2025, first time in modern history, which means that the pressure on the rental market has eased quite a bit. And that's not even taking into account the recent drops that we have seen in the international student numbers, which have been again historically low. We're getting report after report of many universities are laying off staff because there's just a lot less demand for more teachers, faculty, staff, etc., etc. And this combination of higher number of available units for rent paired with the lower number of potential tenants means that we are starting to see a lot of rental drops. In fact, for the last 18 months, the rents have been falling every month in Vancouver, and in July 2025, the situation got even worse. According to Rentals.ca, the rents across Canada have dropped by an average of 2.7%. However, in Vancouver, those numbers are much higher. We're talking about 7.2% drop year over year for a one-bedroom apartment and 7.1% drop for a two-bedroom apartment year over year. And that's not even taking into account the drops in rent that we have seen last year because July 2024 was lower than July 2023. So to recap it, developers are having a really hard time. The low sales and demand means that thousands of units are sitting vacant. On top of that, the construction costs keep on increasing and their carrying costs have also increased because of higher interest rates, which forced a lot of developers to switch to a rental strategy. However, here they were faced with a lot more competition from other developers as well as other landlords. On top of that, the rents keep on dropping because of lower immigration numbers paired with more rental properties being available. And a lot of you might ask, well, why don't developers just stop building for a little while? If there is no demand for their units, just stop building. And that's exactly what a lot of developers are currently doing, which is not exactly good news moving forward because eventually the supply and demand will catch up with each other, and in the future we might start seeing some shortage of housing, and that's exactly what a lot of experts are predicting. In a short-term perspective, we are likely to see rents drop even further as there is less demand for these units and as more units come online. However, long-term perspective, we're talking about years from now, the market should balance itself out, and once again there's going to be strong demand for the units. And in general, Vancouver is still a very expensive city to rent, it's among the highest in Canada for many, many years. These tricky market conditions are especially difficult to navigate for smaller to mid-sized developers. There is only so long they can survive until they will have to either sell at a huge loss or go out of business, declare bankruptcy, and we have started to see some of those things already happening. Time will tell where all of this actually leads to. I'll try to keep you updated on this YouTube channel with anything that develops. Please subscribe so you don't miss those videos when they do come out in the future. If you enjoyed this video up until this point, please give it a thumbs up. That helps out quite a bit. And if you're a first-time home buyer, I have a free guide linked in the description below. If you're a seasoned buyer or if you're a seller looking for some advice about real estate here in Greater Vancouver, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll be happy to help if I can. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.